Is anyone else disgusted by the fact that the Secretary of Homeland Security doesn't know what habeas corpus means? I am. This is just one of her missteps that she's made. After her confirmation, she has appeared completely over her head at her new job. Most recently, when she was asked to define the legal principle of habeas corpus, the former South Dakota governor could not do it. This is one of the country's top law enforcement officials, and she screwed up majorly. It was merely the latest in a string of embarrassments that the Trump administration has had, going from Pete Hegseth to Donald Trump himself in various areas. It underscores that the United States is less safe because of her leadership. She is assigned as the chief protector. Her department, hastily founded in a moment of fear, is charged with protecting the United States from both external and internal threats. With her focus turned almost exclusively on doing what Donald Trump wants her to do, and the mass deportation that has been his linchpin of his presidency, including deporting American citizens at all costs, the Department of Homeland Security is a threat to our rights and our liberty, many of which Noem herself doesn't even know that we possess. As Homeland Security Secretary, Noem wields powers that range all the way from immigration to disaster relief to cybersecurity, yet she can't tell what habeas corpus means. It would be a lot of responsibility for someone who actually knew those areas. She apparently can't even answer a basic constitutional question. Noem is not the person for the job. Instead, over the last few years, she has systematically recrafted herself as a person who will stand behind Trump at all costs. And her loyalty has gotten her this position clearly. Even though her state is nowhere near the border, as governor, she went into the right-wing anti-immigrant fervor. Even when Trump has been skeptical of her qualifications, as during her brief time on the short list of his running mate last year, he has rewarded her loyalty because that's all that matters to him. But her most Trump-like quality public relations efforts since she took office have backfired. Noem has been roundly mocked for her costume choices in her interviews, and her wearing full-face makeup when she is tagged along on immigration and customs enforcement raids. The $50,000 Rolex flashing on her wrist while she posed in front of incarcerated men at a mega prison in El Salvador smacked of callous cruelty. Some of these people are actually American citizens, and the fact that she would parade out there and record that situation is absolutely ridiculous and disgusting. And the theft of her bag, along with $3,000 cash and her work badge while she was sitting in a Washington restaurant, was peak irony for a top security official. Again, similar to Pete Hegseth, there seems to be no regard for security and for protecting the United States. But Noem's performance in the Senate Homeland Security Committee on Tuesday underscored how ill-equipped she is for this moment, or at least for a job to keep Americans safe, when she can't even keep her wallet safe. What does that say? While Noem was testifying on Trump's budget request for the upcoming year, Senator Maggie Hassan, Democrat in New Hampshire, questioned her about the ancient right to challenge an arrest or imprisonment. Well, habeas corpus, she says, is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from the country and suspend their right to. Noem responded before she was cut off by Hassan. That's incorrect, the senator said. Habeas corpus is a legal principle that requires the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for the protection, the government would simply arrest people, including American citizens, which Donald Trump has already done, and hold them indefinitely for no reason, Hassan said, calling it a foundational right. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the court protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone, she asked? Noem responded, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not. That is categorically false. The Constitution provides that it's false. The statutes provide that. Balance of powers provide that. Donald Trump has no such power. And by them trying to say that we're under invasion, they're trying to have a loophole that does not exist. It's true that two of our greatest presidents, Abraham Lincoln and Franklin D. Roosevelt, did suspend habeas corpus during wartime. The Constitution does allow for doing so during a rebellion or an invasion, but we are not in a rebellion and we are not an invasion. People entering our country illegally is not an invasion. But legal scholars rightly believe that the suspension clause assigns Congress, not the president, the right to suspend habeas corpus. Crucially, the Trump administration has been busy trying to sell this idea through various media outlets. It's a lie. We are not at war, despite what President Trump and his cronies may say. Facing migrants to the South is not a war. There's no real basis in this framing in the law or in the grounds that they are trying to get. It's a fiction. It's a lie. He is a salesperson, a con person who's actually been found of, 36 counts of fraud? As Noem oversees a deportation program that threatens to grow larger by the day, she has already proved herself to be extremely available to whatever Donald Trump wants her to be available for. She has wildly claimed that Afghan refugees can safely return to their home country, despite the clear threat of Taliban reprisals. And she has made no effort to retrieve people who have been wrongly deported. None of this speaks to her being a valiant defender of American rights and ideals. She's also a cabinet member. Noem on paper reports to nobody but the president. On paper, she's the one who has operational control over ICE and customs and border protection. But it is obvious that when it comes to immigration, her marching orders come primarily from White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. This to me seems like an abuse of power and something that needs to be curtailed very soon, because Stephen Miller is a very dangerous individual. Some may say he has alt-right views. And Miller hasn't been shy about that habeas could be suspended to fight the imagined invasion threat, which is not true. Noem's willingness to perform as a puppet makes her much more dangerous than any other secretary in the department's brief history. When DHS was cobbled together after the September 11th attacks, the new department was sold to the public as a shield against terrorism. But it has always been a weapon easily pointed back at the population. It is meant to defend. Noem's apparent ignorance is a cause for mockery. Someone should take her place who actually knows and realizes how sacred and how important the position she is in is. But she doesn't. But also one for alarm. The dread of seeing a loaded firearm in the hands of someone entirely unsure of how it works. Come on. Can we do better? Can we start letting our Congress people know that we actually want people who are competent to protect us? Not based on their appearance or the favors that they've done for the president? Please, someone.